two, one. Abdul, welcome to the December 26er podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Already looking at the background of your screen, I know that this is going to be a great conversation and a really storied journey that we get to jump into today. So I'm really excited to have you.
Great, great. Good to be here. And
All
Happy
right.
New Year.
Happy New Year to
We
you
can
as
still say
well.
that, right? It's
Yes. I think
still
I'm on
close.
today's like my cutoff for the most part. Like, unless
Right,
we're like super tight and I haven't spoken to you yet, I think after the 15th is when I just stopped saying it.
right.
Um, but we could still say it at this juncture.
Okay.
All right, let's jump into it. Who is Abdul Malik Abbott?
Abdul Malik Abbott is a dedicated artist. So that's what I'll call myself. I am a filmmaker. I'm a musician. I am a producer. I'm a director. I'm a writer. I used to paint. I used to draw. I don't do that anymore. Um, and I think I'm a good human being.
I can tell by your energy that you're a good human being. I from the beginning, from the moment you jumped on the screen. So, and Demarcus, our producer, does a great job of bringing the right energy to the show. So, so
Wonderful.
yeah, I mean, those are many hats that you've mentioned that you wear, and obviously a multi hyphenate and a really talented human being. But take me back to the beginning. What is your origin story? How did you grow up?
Okay. Well, I'm gonna take it back to my father. His name was Randy Abbott. He passed away a few years ago. He was a filmmaker and a photographer, and he had his a photography studio in Harlem. So I'm from Harlem, New York. I was raised in Harlem. Um, my mother and father actually got divorced at some point, but I still looked up to him as someone who's out there doing something different. So this was back in the 70s, where he was teaching at Studio Museum of Harlem. One of his students was Julie Dash, who did Daughters of the Dust. So I always big up Julie Dash for being around my father and learning from him, because I didn't get to learn from him. She did. So I'm always honored to even know her. And so I was basically just noticing that that's what he was doing. I thought it was cool. I wasn't interested in it. I was a comic book kid, loved comic books. I was a DC kid. Sorry to the Marvel people. I'm a Marvel person too. But back then I was into comic books, and so I would draw all the time, and I was cool with that. Just living my life in Harlem, and then suddenly this movie came out called Star Wars, and then it just changed my life. Uh, One, it was a great movie, but two, it introduced me to the fact that the people behind the movie can be celebrities as well.
Mm.
Meaning George Lucas was just as big as Star Wars, even though he was a quiet, reserved filmmaker. To me, I thought he was like, "Oh, this guy is amazing." And then Steven Spielberg came out with stuff like Jaws. Well, actually, I was a kid really young when Jaws came out, but I think it was more Raiders of the Lost Ark that got me really interested in becoming a filmmaker and emulating these people behind the camera. I didn't even want to be in front of the camera. Most people want to be an actor. I was like, oh, I want to make movies. So I started just drawing stuff, and I would do comics and stuff like that. That was super tedious. So you would spend a lot of time alone while you're drawing. And I would do a lot of animation, single cell animation. That took weeks and weeks to just do something that's a couple of seconds. So I was like, I can't do this forever. So that's when I started realizing I can film stuff. So I had a little 8mm camera, and I would go around and film stuff. I would tape the camera to my bicycle and try to make it look like I'm chasing somebody. And later on, I would draw little lasers coming out of the pretend gun just by scratching the negative. So I was a creative kid and just really loved movies at that point, and never stopped loving films.
So oftentimes when a kid is that interested in the arts in some form or another, other scholastic subjects can feel tedious and like a distraction. So was that the case for you? Were you like in all other forms of academics, like I'm not really feeling that? Or were you interested in other studies as well?
I mean, I had to do the basics, so no matter what, I had to do it. So, elementary school, you had to do everything. No one cared if you were an artist at elementary school. So I would just say by the time I got to high school, I think that's more of a place where you're really making a firm decision on what you might want to do. So I went to LaGuardia High School of Music and Art, which spun off performing arts. They eventually merged, and for people who don't know, that school spun off the movie Fame, so it was based off of people there. So I was once I got into high school. Let me go back. At one point, I decided I wanted to be a singer, so I was I joined the Boys Choir of Harlem as a soprano. So I was a kid, and I didn't particularly. I was not very outgoing, so I was very introverted. But to me, it was just being around other people and being in a group and you had to learn, discipline and stuff like that. So I think it was my mother who pushed me into that, to be honest with you. But I did go along with it and did join the Boys Choir of Harlem and was in the Boys Choir of Harlem for several years and just learning discipline. So I didn't have a strict. Yes, I did. I had a strict upbringing. So I was raised Muslim, and so there was no shenanigans. I like to say there was none of that. So you're basically taught to just be respectful, be humble, and have a goal in life. So that actually helped. So when I joined the choir, that was one thing. But at one point, I was like, I don't want to sing. That's not my thing. If you got to step out and do a solo, I was not. I was shy. I couldn't do that. I can't do that now. So so back to music and art. So once I got into music and art, I really started to focus on what I really wanted to do, which was be an artist. So I was doing everything there, from oil painting, sketching, color and ink, pen and ink. I mean, charcoal, anything you think, art history. But also you had to take other classes, English, French, all that stuff. I to this day, I always was mad that I took French instead of Spanish.
Mhm.
Because I never used any of the French, and I could be using the Spanish right now if I would have thought about it.
So, those of us who did not go to a performing arts high school, but have seen Fame the movie or Fame the TV show that came after, we have this sort of mythical view of music and art, right? Of that. Like, you just picture kids walking around in leg warmers, like, just completely focused on whatever their craft is. But what is that balance like when you're a student there, from the regular classes to honing in on your talents?
Well, and since I went to music and art, the performing arts was in another building, downtown. So I didn't really experience the dancers. I was more involved with the musicians
Hmm.
and the artists. So, and I think that maybe there was some singing, and I can't remember, but it was sort of not like the movie where it's a musical, because that would be unreasonable and unbelievable. But I was coming up when hip hop was already born. So I was in class with Dana Dane. If you remember Dana Dane, I went to school with Slick Rick. I didn't even know he's British, but he is. But so I'm with these guys, and they're my friends, and they're talented. I couldn't rap, so I'd be the one banging on the locker, or banging on the lunch table, giving them a beat so they can rap. So I was always in the business of people creating and being artistic and putting building whatever their persona is, especially with the rappers, because some of these guys weren't what they came out to be as rappers, but they had to grow into that. So it was just a major experience of just sort of like being around people who are emerging. I see Sterling Campbell, he's a drummer. I mean, there's so many people that was in my class that went off to do big and great things.
And when you're in that environment where you have aspirations, you have talents, and you're around all these people who have their respective journeys that they're hoping to end up on, did you know at that moment, like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? Like, was there that confidence in knowing that you could make a career out of what you were focused on as a teenager?
I'm gonna say yes, but it was a long journey.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned, I was doing animation. So while I was in high school, I was still doing animation and I had my Super 8 camera, but I didn't really think about being a filmmaker really until I started taking classes at School of Visual Arts, which is a college.
Mm-hmm.
I would take classes, animation classes on the weekend. So while I'm in high school, I'm taking these free classes, and I did that for 3 years, and that's when I realized that you know this building right here has a filmmaking course, and you can learn to be a director, and you can write and stuff like that. Let me take that back. I hated writing, so I don't think I wanted to do that, but I know you could be a director and you can be a cinematographer. Those are my two goals. So I once I graduated from high school, I applied for School of Visual Arts, and actually I didn't get in.
Mm.
I applied and I didn't get in. So, but that was the only school I wanted to go to. So I reapplied as an artist. I applied as a filmmaker and I didn't get in, but I went and reapplied as an artist. I would say, a lot of great art. So, and I got in. So I was like, all right, cool. I guess I'm just going to go to the school for art. I didn't really think it through too much. But when I went down to pick my classes, there was still it was a slight mix up, and they were like, oh, you're here for film, right? And I was like, yeah, I'm here for film. So I picked all the film classes. Like I stepped away, went through the book, changed everything, and picked all the film classes. And then I got in as a film student. And then I would say like maybe 2 months in, someone called me to the office and was like, you're not supposed to be in this department. But I was like, I talked a good game. I was like, well, I already bought all the books and I already started and blah, blah, blah. So they let me stay. I just had to keep up a good grade point average. So since college was very expensive, there was no doubt that I was not going to keep up a good grade point average. So that's how I stayed in the film world. So I could have went a whole nother direction if they decided they were going to kick me out of the department.
I do wonder, like, if we were talking about this day and age, would it have taken them 2 months to figure out that you were in the wrong
I
department?
mean, it could have been a month, but whatever it was, I had already started classes. I already bought the books. So, there was no turning back for me
So,
anyway.
so having gotten rejected at first to the film concentration, getting in under a different concentration, and then sort of finding this other way now to proceed on the filmmaking track, did you feel, um, by way of comparison or anything, was that a psychological game for you where you felt like, do I really belong here? Can I measure up to these kids who got in or were accepted to this program in a traditional sense? Or did you just have the confidence to believe that this is the lane that you were supposed to be in and you would be successful in it?
I definitely believed in my talents. I really didn't care about the other students, to be honest with you, because I didn't know them yet. So I didn't know who was good and who wasn't. So there was already a bit of self-confidence because, it was only like two Black people in the entire class. You know what I mean? Maybe two and a half, because one guy was Puerto Rican. So, but he was darker skinned Puerto Rican. So you always have to just be better than everyone else. So, I forgot the exact phrase, but you had to be twice as good just to be just as good. So there was no way I was not going to be at the top of the class, or at least put out good work to represent. And I wasn't trying to be political and represent the entire community. I was trying to represent my people and make sure that I do make my mother and my father proud. So that was my goal. There was no hesitation on like, oh, am I good enough? Because like I said, when you just start, like, nobody's great. You know what I mean? Some people know stuff and some people don't. I just happen to know stuff.
So thinking back to that time, now you're studying filmmaking. You've moved away from drawing and illustration and all of that stuff. How did the career vision start to come to light? Like there are many different directions you can go in, even as a filmmaker. So when did it start to crystallize for you what area you wanted to focus on?
Well, I always wanted to direct, and I always liked cinematography. Cinematography was much more difficult than it is now because it wasn't digital, it was film. So you had to really know your chops. You got to use a light meter. You got to know what type of film to buy, the right exposures, the right camera angle, shutter angle. So there's a lot of stuff you had to know. Um, when it came to cinematography, there was a lot of math, basically. Directing was just as difficult, to be honest with you. So I just picked two of the most difficult positions to go for. But I do have a sense of reality, so I knew I had to learn other things. And since it's a film school that teaches everything, not just what you want. So there was film history, film theory, there was sound, there was writing, there was editing, um, cinematography, directing. So it was a lot of stuff, and then we had to take other classes too. So it was a lot to take in. But basically, I did the smart thing, which was during the first school break, I just went to the job board and started to intern on movies for credit, basically. So I would intern. I've interned on a movie called Chain Letters. It's like a low budget independent movie, and but I always will say it throughout this whole thing. I was the only black person on that crew. Period. There was no question. Like I would just be that dude. So that's why I just learned and just sort of figured out how things are run on a set, whether it's big budget or low budget. They're shooting a movie, so I got to learn how things went, even though I was a PA/intern. The intern part, meaning they didn't have to pay me, but the PA production assistant part is like, I'm just the gopher, do whatever you guys want me to do. So that's how I sort of started early in the business, as
Well,
like I think I was 16 or something, or maybe younger.
wow.
I was legal, so I think it was 16.
So you're interning, you're doing the PA thing, studying at School of Visual Arts. What does the next chapter of your career look like once you finish the academic journey?
Gotcha. So after that, I did move on to different. It says it's causing an echo. I don't know what that means. Sorry, you might have to edit this part out. I got an alert, but if we're cool, I'm gonna keep going.
Mm-hmm.
So during school, I did work on a few other films as a PA/intern, and I just got to meet a few people on set um, who are already professional. And one person that I stayed in contact with, her name was Barbara Zom. She was a sound mixer, and that was the last thing I wanted to do, was be a sound mixer. But that was my way in, basically, where I met with her after I graduated. She taught me a few things about sound mixing and being the boom operator. And I just had all the knowledge, and then you have to start from scratch. I hope to this day that the film schools teach the business of film, because they didn't really teach the business of film. They didn't really say what you had to do to get a job. They didn't say who you should know to get a job. They didn't teach you certain things that I would find today beneficial. So I had to just get out there on my own and figure it out. So I started out at the bottom again with a degree, but now I'm still a PA. I was a PA on the Equalizer TV series back, not the one with Queen Latifah,
Of course.
with the British guy, but I was a parking PA. And a parking PA is just the PAs that go to the location before they shoot and put the cones out so no one would park there. And this is in Manhattan, so you're trying to stop people from parking. So, I'm the skinny kid, but I'm tall. So, some people didn't bother me, but some people just got mad, and no one got in any fights. But it was a challenging job to stop New Yorkers from parking in a parking spot where they feel like, oh, this is my block, I could park here. So that was my initial introduction into the professional world, because it was a major I think it was CBS that was doing it. So, they'd come with all the big trucks and everything, and then I would go home. I wouldn't even be there. So that was pretty much after I graduated. I did go to, I went and I directed a documentary for the Boys Choir of Harlem, actually, after I had left them for years. And I went on their European tour and traveled and went to England and France and Germany and shot a documentary for them. So that was my first professional job, basically. even though I was a one-man band, I had to do everything: the camera, the lights, the sound, and it wasn't a little tiny camcorder. It was like a big, giant camera with a big 3/4 inch deck with a big old battery belt. So I just remember that job probably threw my spine out of out of whack for several months.
So how did that come about, right? Because when you think about a documentary and what it takes to produce, you do think of an entire crew, not only just one person, but one young guy going on the road and making it happen. So how did that opportunity present itself? Did you pitch it or were you pitched?
No, so basically, through whatever circumstances, my mother actually ended up working at the Boys Choir of Harlem and became the assistant to the Walter Turnbull, who was the founder. So I was always in contact with them. So I think they just wanted someone to cover their tour as a documentary, and it was just an ask. They just said, "Hey, can you do it?" And I was like, "Sure, I can do it." And that was kind of it.
So you bring these lights and the camera and all these things, and you're like, I'm just going to do this on my own. Was there ever a moment in that process, though, where you were like, okay, I might be in over my head here?
I don't think it was that. I think it was too. I just always felt it was a bit much to be the one man band because, like I said, it's not. It wasn't as tiny cameras digital as it is now. It was. I know I have a photo of it of me just holding this thing. So I just felt like, man, I wish I had an assistant at the minimum, because if you're trying to shoot and then you're trying to worry about the sound, at some point, something's going to falter. So that was it. I mean, it wasn't overwhelming. I think it was boring and it was a pain in the butt to be on a tour bus for several weeks with a bunch of kids who were touring, and they were sort of out of control. So it was more the personalities that got on my nerves. But the job was whatever it was. To me, it wasn't the best documentary in the world because I was using faulty equipment and stuff would break down, and I'm overseas and they're on a different, like their electrical cycle is different than ours.
Right.
So and everything's PAL, so I keep converting everything. So it was a little difficult. Never did I like, oh, I'm over my head. It's like, man, I wish I didn't do this by myself.
But were you able to leverage that project to get to the next level in your career or get additional opportunities?
No, no, not at all. Not at all. I can't really say that I did, so I won't. The opportunity came, let's see, I'm trying to figure out the breakthrough. So the breakthrough was through working on those no budget movies. Some of the people who worked on it were trying to do short films. So someone had called me to be a camera assistant on a short film. I kind of knew camera, but I wasn't the best at it. But I was just an assistant. So I showed up, and once again, I'm the only Black person, but heck, there was going to be another Black person on that shoot. They thought I was him. He was a sound guy, and I was in the camera department. So eventually this other guy, his name is Charles Hunt, came. He showed up. He was a sound mixer. He was just starting out. And, I introduced myself. I was like, hey, I'm Abdul. They thought I was you. Isn't that funny? Blah, blah, blah. So we stayed in contact. And then down the road, he called me up out of the blue and said, hey, I need a boom operator for an MTV commercial that they're shooting. I was like, yeah, I could do that. I never really did boom operating before. I did know a little sound from that person who had introduced me to sound, a few years ago. And then I studied sound in school, but I didn't want to do sound, so I didn't care about it. But I said yes to the job, went to the job, and we met another Black guy. Like, oh, 3 Black people on the shoot. Yeah, somebody's going to call the cops. But he was cool. His name is Marcus Turner. And he was like, hey, man, it's a Black sound team. Wow, that's pretty cool. There's a movie coming up called Death by Temptation, and Ernest Dickerson is going to shoot it. Ernest Dickerson shoots for Spike Lee. I think they had just finished School Days. And I was like, all right. So we both went in for that job to work on this movie called Death by Temptation. I think it was just called Temptation at the time, but it was called Death by Temptation. Kadeem Hardison was the star. Um, Bill Nunn was in it. Samuel Jackson was in it before he was big or anything like that. And so we worked on that. And that's where we sort of started to meet all these black filmmakers that we didn't know existed. So the crew was mixed, but there was more than what I ever saw on a set. So I worked on that movie as a boom operator. That was tough. It's a tough gig because I was new to it, and it was low budget, so the equipment didn't quite work all the time. And my friend Charles was being grumpy to me, and I hated him at the time, but we're friends now. So once that ended, there was another job that was coming up, and that was Spike Lee joint, Do the Right Thing. So everybody was like, oh, we're going over to work on Do the Right Thing. Of course, I wanted to work on it, but I didn't get called for it. Charles got called for it, and they had another sound guy mixing it. So he got called to work on Do the Right Thing. I can go too details, or I can kind of do a broad stroke. So you let me know.
Let's go into the details. I mean, you just mentioned Do the Right Thing. So anybody listening to this, their ears are going to perk up. Absolutely. So you should feel free to dive as deeply as you would like to.
Okay. So yeah, so there was already a sound team, and it was a union gig. So it was already a sound mixer and a boom operator. My friend Charles went over to be the third in the sound department. So I was like, oh, I want to work on it. And like, because I had made friends with all those folks from that other movie, and they all went to work on it. So I remember going to visit the set. They had just started. And I was like, man, I really want to work on this job. And then something happened, and my friend Charles got another gig like in Africa. And he was like, oh, I'm going to go to Africa. You could take my place. So that's how I got on it a week later, and pretty much started working on Do the Right Thing, which was all on one block, by the way. It was never anywhere else. So, I was a Manhattan snob, and I had to drive the Bed-Stuy every day. I had a little hoopty car, and basically I had made friends with a camera assistant from the other job. Her name is Darnell Martin. So she was working on Do the Right Thing as well. And so I would pick her up in the morning, drive the set every day. But it was a great experience, and that's pretty much where I met almost half of the people I know now was just from one movie. So even people who you were like, oh, this guy, what's his name? Martin Lawrence. Now he's a huge star. But back then he was just this funny, skinny guy, just told a lot of jokes. But he was funny. Like Martin Lawrence was hilarious. And then Bill Nunn and Giancarlo Esposito, like all these people, Rosie Perez, like they're all there. And then you got the OGs, which is I guess Sam Jackson wasn't an OG. He just had the OG flavor, but he was still coming up. But we did get to work with Ruby Dee and people like that, where they're icons. And the whole shoot was one of those. I can't say it was politics, but Sharpton would come by, and like all these people would just stop by the shoot. And I think there's a documentary on that where people would just show up, but it was a great experience, and I got to meet so many people, Robbie Reed and Academy Award winner what's her name, Ruthie Carter, who won for Black Panther. Mm-hmm. So I got to make friends with all these folks who went on to do great things, and a lot of my friends who were assistant here and assistant there, they went on to be great directors as well.
So when you're in an environment like that, when you see these retrospectives for the 25-year anniversary of this movie or the 30th for that, there's always people who are like, the moment I stepped on that set, I knew it was something special. I just knew in my gut. You always wonder if they really knew that, or if they're just engaging in revisionist history because of what the project has become when it has reached this iconic status. What was that like for you? Did you know that something special was brewing? Or did it feel like this is just a good job that I want to be on?
Well, I knew something special was brewing because the movie was so unusual. In the reality, it takes place in one day, 24-hour period. I knew it was special, one, because I was working on it with Spike Lee, who to me was an inspiration for sure. He didn't have that many movies out, but to see someone who looks like me in a street hip, even though he was kind of nerdy, but his character Mars was street hip. So I identified with that character. And but also just seeing our people working on this movie in different departments was inspirational. I didn't know how the movie was going to turn out, to be honest with you, but the experience was priceless to me. So I always credit working on this movie at the minimum as something that just inspired me to say, hey, you can do this. Like, you can be in this industry. Now, nothing was easy, I can guarantee that. But I did find that being on that set the tone of like, okay, so if you do this, you can do that. You can do this, you can do that. So, and also other people are like, not scheming, but other people are planning on their careers as well. So you're trying to figure out, what's my lane? How am I going to get to where I want to go? Being in the sound department is not going to do it, by the way,
Right.
but it does help pay the bills.
So what did the next transition look like? Knowing that, like, okay, where I am, I'm not going to get it this way. What did the
Right.
next step look like for you?
Well, the goal was directing. That was up
Mhm.
here. I was down here. I'm trying to get like, wait, I was down here. I'm trying to get up there. So where we were in the industry, there was the music video world was blowing up. So MTV was out. MTV I think was out for a while, but I was an MTV kid. Like, I loved MTV. I didn't flip out if there weren't black people on it, because I just like music. Yeah, of course I was mad that they weren't on it, but it wasn't like, oh, I'm never going to watch MTV. I still watch it because I liked the Billy Idol and the Culture Club and Duran Duran. Like, I was the nerd. I liked that stuff. So, but there was also Video Music Box eventually that came out where you can see the hip hop videos. So to me, I didn't care. But my goal was like, okay, so I like music videos and they're accessible, meaning like you can actually shoot them. Like, it's not something that is a major motion picture where you got to have so much energy behind you that it probably would never happen. The music videos, you have the crew and everything, and you need the job and the money, but it's possible to do that. So my goal was to direct a music video, be a music video director. So how am I going to get there? I don't know. That was the thing. Like, how do you do that? So I did a music video in college. It was terrible. The artist was terrible, but I still did it. They played it at a nightclub. I was so proud, but it never made it on TV. It was a horrible video. So I knew I had a long journey to go. So I was like, okay, well, I'm already in the sound department. What are my other skills? Oh, I can edit. I'm a decent editor. Now, I hated editing, by the way, but I knew how to do it. So and keep in mind, I'm taking courses here and there outside of college. So I took some classes at Educational Video Center and Downtown Community Television. I'm going out of my way to learn this stuff. Where other people are out playing basketball. I wasn't a sports person. I like the Yankees. I played Little League, but that's as far as it went. So I'm 6'2", and I was like, how come you're not playing ball? I was like, there's plenty of people playing ball. I'm trying to make movies. So that was my goal. I always felt slightly outside of whatever everyone else in the hood was doing. And keep in mind, I'm in Harlem, so it's like,
Right.
and people in Harlem aren't really feeling Culture Club or Duran Duran. You know what I mean? So it's not like I was hiding it. It was just sort of just, I can identify with the streets, but I can also identify with the world. And I know there's a bigger world than just Uptown.
Mm-hmm.
So with that knowledge, I decided, okay, let me see if I can edit some stuff. So I would start editing projects, documentaries mostly, which, is not the best thing to show off your flashy skills, because it's really more reality. And then there was this one movie that came out called Streets of Fire, and they had this opening which was cut to music and it was dipping to black. It was very MTV style. It's like, oh, I can do that. I like that style. So I think I tried that on a couple of projects. And in the meantime, I'm trying to build a reel, but I don't really have a reel because I hadn't done a music video yet. So back to the sound. So I'm doing sound, doing good gigs here and there. But the thing that changed my career path was also doing sound, but also doing sound on music videos, where I was in charge. I was the playback person, which is the person who takes the machine. Back then, it's not like your iPhone now, where you can just go play it on a digital thing. You had to have the Nagra recorder with this digital slate and speakers and all that. So I was in charge of that. And sometimes I would record the artist live for the music video. They might have a little scene with dialogue. So I was starting to do that. And within that world, I'm still the only Black person on the set now, except for maybe a PA, maybe wardrobe, and that's that. And then the artist, because
Well,
I
what
would
genre
hire,
were you working on at this point?
at the genre was mostly hip hop and R&B.
So hip hop and R&B, but you were still one of only a handful of
Right. So I
Black
mean,
folks on the crew.
yeah, Black folks were not getting work. I mean, yeah, in the Spike Lee world, that was Spike Lee University, I call it. Like that place was like the best place to be Black, but in reality, it ain't gonna happen anywhere else. So I would show up on set, I'd be the brother on set, and I would just do playback on these videos. So any artists in the late 90s, I'm not late 90s, sorry, late 80s or in early 90s, I was on those jobs. Anybody you can think of, name one artist, I probably worked on a video. But in my mind, I'm like, okay, how is this going to get me to direct? So what I did was I realized this is a business. So who do I need to buddy up with, a buddy up to? And that was the video commissioners who were hired by the record label. So the record label had a video commissioner, which is a person who oversaw the production of that artist's song. So I started to befriend those folks because I was the person who's playing the music, which is basically what they represent. They represent the artist and the music. So since I'm playing the music, they always got to talk to me. At least they got to hand it to me at the minimum. And then I would be friendly with the artist. So I was just basically planting seeds. Like, how am I going to make this work? You can't really go to the artist because they don't really have any say so. So I would just befriend the video commissioner to the point where I was like, okay, so let me figure out how I'm going to get an editing job. Because I want to do music videos and maybe I can get in as an editor. So luckily I had a friend who started a production company, and then she hired me to edit a music video. I never edited a music video before, but she let me do it. I think it was for Kwame, if you remember Kwame. So I think it was for Kwame. And so I did it, and she gave me tons of notes. I was like, wow, this is harassment. But she did basically teach me how she edits. Like, this is what I like. I couldn't say anything because it's like, I don't know what I'm doing anyway. So I'm just doing it. So I'm learning on the job. And so that was the one video I got. And then I got another one with Salt and Pepper. No, maybe it was Queen Latifah. No, it was Salt and Pepper. The next one I did was Salt and Pepper. And so I was doing double duty. I would be on the set doing playback, and then separate check, by the way. Then you edit the video. So I did that for a little while, and I was building up a reel of just editing. So at one point, I was starting to plant the seed in the video commissioners' heads that, hey, I'm an editor, but I want to direct. So luckily, at some point, I'm skipping a whole lot of stuff, but luckily at some point, one of the video commissioners at Jive Records, and Carly, always give her props, said, okay, I got a group that's looking for a director. It's a new group. They call Too Many. It's like a really kind of a bubblegum hip hop group. If you want to do the video, write a treatment and we'll see what happens. So a treatment, for people who don't know, it's basically your pitch on what the music video is going to be. So they give you the song, you write it out. If you're smart, you'll do a lookbook and stuff like that. Storyboards if you're really gung-ho. So I was able to pull in all the favors because they only had I don't know how much they had, like 18,000. I mean, that sounds like a decent amount of money today because everything's digital. You could do it cheap, but back then it was film. So to get a crew and a stage, art department, cast and everything for a music video for 18,000 was not easy.
Mm-hmm.
But I called in all these favors from all the people I met on Do the Right Thing. I did skip another movie though. I did go on to work on Mo Better Blues.
Mm.
Well, so on Mo Better Blues, that's the crew 2.0, because then the crew sort of like even got blacker. So, and people moved up in their positions. My position on that one was playback, ironically. So I was playing back the music for Denzel and Wesley and Giancarlo and Bill Nunn to play on stage, but they didn't really play. The only person who really played was the drummer.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in charge of that, and sometimes that would be second boom. So that was already set in motion with still being in the sound department and at least mastering the art of playback, which is more technical than anything, and it's also just paying attention, because you could ruin a job if you don't know what you're doing. So then back to the video. So basically, it was a video that I did for Too Many called "Where's the Party." It's my first gig, and luckily Will Smith produced that song, or co-produced the song, so he was in the video. So I was like, oh, my first video, I got Will Smith to be in it. So we shot the video with the group in New York, and then I had to drive to Philly with a tiny crew and film Will Smith just doing some ad libs and stuff like that. And that worked out, but it was just one video, so that didn't really move my career anywhere. It gave people like, oh, he did a job. Okay, great. And I think it played on TV a couple times. So, that's, to me, that was a big deal, but I never just sit on one success. You have to go to the next one. So the next one I did was for jazz legend Abbey Lincoln. Now, Abbey Lincoln has been around for decades. She's a jazz singer, actress. And this was also for Jive Records. So I've made a connection with the record label. But this is jazz. This is traditional jazz. This has no hip hop whatsoever. So the treatment I wrote, I made it so it's a little more hip than what you would think. I had these kids in it and made it like the Blues Brothers. And so that was my second video. But it didn't get me much play because it's jazz.
Right.
And it only played, I don't even know where they played it, to be honest with you. But I was just glad to work with her because I knew who she was.
And this is pre-internet. So I'm thinking, now I'm trying to wonder if I ever saw a jazz video before the internet was a thing.
Yeah, you never really see. You only see like maybe like Najee or I forgot the name of the other guy with the curly hair.
Kenny G, right? Kenny, it was like contemporary jazz, right?
Right. So this one was probably just overseas. I don't even know where they played it, to be honest with you. I never saw it on TV. So I was like, okay, well, I have that. The resume is getting bigger, but the jobs aren't flowing because I just had a jazz video and a pop rap video, and that was it. I think the big break came when another record label exec that I worked with time and time again, it's like, oh, I got a video for this group called Original Flavor, and they're signed with Atlantic. And she was like, well, they got this manager. His name is Damon Dash. And, he's kind of arrogant and kind of a pain in the butt. But if you can deal with him, and I'm like, well, he's from Harlem. I'm from Harlem. I'm cool with everybody. I don't care. So, yeah, I'll work with them. So I wrote a treatment. I met with Damon and the group, and we got along and got the video. And that was pretty much the real introduction into, like, stuff that people saw. So, you know, and then within that video, I guess I can't minimize this. So within that video, there's like this one cat in the background who's an extra who let us film the group driving up in his car. It was Jay-Z. He hadn't really came out yet. He was doing little cameos here and there on different artists, including Original Flavor. But I remembered him only because we were shooting at a bar, but it wasn't open. And apparently he was trying to buy a bottle of champagne, and they wouldn't sell it to him because it was illegal because the bar wasn't open. So someone was like, oh, you got to talk to this guy. He's being, he's getting a little aggressive and we can't really, sell him. Can you just talk to him? So I just went up and said, hey, we can't really sell you the alcohol because the bar's not open. He was like, all right, cool. And that was it. I was like, okay. I never even thought twice about who this guy was, to be honest with you. and he was in the video, but he was barely in it. So months later, that video came out. It actually ended up on TV, and it was like on rotation by the time BET was playing videos, and MTV started Yo MTV Rap. So it was I was getting some airplay. And then just one day at a random meeting, I ran into Damon Dash downtown. He was like, "Man, I want to do a video for my boy Jay-Z. We're starting a record label. You want to do it?" And they had like no money, like literally like no money. And I always say, keep in mind, this is film. So film is just not cheap. Film,
Right.
like a roll of film is $100 something, and it runs for maybe 10 minutes. So no matter what, you can't just roll with just the camera. You need lights because it's a whole big thing. But luckily, I've been working now. I made all these connections, all these friends. So I was able to put that video together with favors, basically. So they had a little money. We got the camera, had to use insurance, got to buy the insurance. So we went and shot in Marcy. And then it was just basically using the favors I had. I ran into someone who was repping a Steadicam operator. And that Steadicam is where you put the camera on a little rig and it looks like it's floating. And he needed stuff for his reels. So he came in for free. So we did this video called I Can't Get With That. And it was Jay-Z's first official video. Shot in Marcy, shot downtown Brooklyn, and had a bunch of people in the video doing cameos. And that one was basically just done for Video Music Box, which is that channel in New York that plays hip hop videos, because no one would really play him because he wasn't signed. He was independent. And they didn't even have Rockefeller Records didn't even have an office yet. It was just an idea in their heads. I mean, they had the label, but it wasn't set up yet. So that was the introduction. So like I said, I can go too deep. So you want to push me along, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's interesting that you mentioned Video Music Box with the documentary that came out recently on the phenomenon that was that show. And it really was the hub for hip hop and for artists to be featured and for everyday people to be featured as well. And then the whole Yo MTV Raps thing, we could spend an hour talking about that piece, basically following the format in a lot of ways. But at that point, so I think when I think back to hip hop videos, it's funny that you mentioned like the budgets, because my mind, when I read about your story, immediately went to like the Bad Boy era, when you were getting $1 million to shoot a video, right? Or Waterfalls, these really high tech R&B and hip hop videos where they were dumping money and kind of forgetting that was a moment in time. And before that, the resources really were not there in this sort of earlier phases of rap and hip hop. And also, what is surprising to me is I don't think I realized that early on, people who didn't look like us were directing these videos and really putting them out there. But now you're in the situation where you have a couple under your belt. Rockefeller's in its embryonic stages, doesn't really, it hasn't really become what we know to be Rockefeller today, but the foundation is being laid. So for you, right, you shot Original Flavor with, for Jive, you shot this one for them, but the relationship continued to videos that we all know now today and that are quite popular. So after that, the first one is out for Jay. How did the next videos, when Jay-Z is Jay-Z and Rockefeller is Rockefeller, how did those come about?
Let's see. Well, the next one would be In My Lifetime. He had a song called In My Lifetime. And they're, like I said, they're still trying to figure themselves out. I'm still trying to figure myself out as a director, trying to get more work, but they're trying to get distribution deals for the label. So we got the one video. I know we already did that one. So we got the video In My Lifetime, and that was basically a definitely collaboration, because we didn't know what to shoot at that point, because I remember it was January in New York and it was freezing. So I don't know who pitched the idea. I think it was them, because they were like, let's go to St. Thomas and shoot the video. And I was like, bet, let's do that. So they went and scouted all the locations without me. They just went and did it. So all the locations in that video, it was like the precursor to Big Pimpin', without the Big Pimpin' budget. So so next thing you know, we flying like ton of people out. I had my skeleton crew. I was really starting to build my crew up of people who I want to keep working with. And it was maybe a 6-man crew, but everybody else was extras and homies and background people. So we all flew out and went and shot that video, real guerrilla style mostly, but we didn't have to steal any locations because they knew all these people who had the yachts and the speedboats and the mansion and all that. So they were sort of living that life, but not putting it in my pocket, but they were still living that life. You know, we didn't have to get fake diamonds for Jay. He had them. He had real diamonds. So we didn't have to worry about that. So doing that video, did the In My Lifetime video. Maybe it was Payday that released it, or a Profile label. I'm not sure. So we did that one. That one was released. You know, it got a little play here and there. He's still not, you know, nationally known. He's more local. I think the thing that changed was there was a moment where they got another deal. So we did a remix of the same song. So we took the video from St. Thomas and then shot some more footage at a Italian gangster restaurant, or I think it was a real gangster mob restaurant in Brooklyn, and cut that together. And they had a deal with another label. So in the meantime, he's putting records out, doing cameos on other art with other artists, and I'm trying to shop my deal. A director's deal with labels. So I'm showing the labels, hey, this, you know, take a look at this guy Jay-Z. You know, he's still looking to get signed, and so I'm selling me, but I'm also selling him. Like I wanted him to get a deal, or Rockefeller to get a deal, and they would always pass. No, we got Biggie, because Biggie had just came out, so Biggie was repping Brooklyn, and they were good with that. So that was pretty much what I was doing for a little while. And then Rockefeller had other artists, so I did a couple other videos for their other artists, but they never came out. Like they decided to drop them or whatever. So, but the relationship was solid.
So, you know, thinking back to that time, how many years had you been out of School of Visual Arts at that point? When we're talking about sort of this period of trying to pitch yourself and Jay-Z at the same time to labels.
It was probably like 5 years, probably like 5 years, 5 or 6 years before I really got things going. Yeah, I would say that.
So, you know, for 5 years, in hindsight, doesn't seem like a lot of time to build a career, particularly a career in this business. But back then, did you feel like this is really taking forever? Like, when is the big break, the really big break going to come?
No, I didn't think that, because I was always working,
Hmm.
and since I had a lot of other skills, like, you know, I sort of have I sort of have to focus on what I'm doing. So if I'm making money and I'm not doing anything illegal, and I'm doing stuff that's in my wheelhouse of what I studied, I can't say I'm good with that, because I'm still ambitious, but I'm okay with working my way up. And like I said, if you're making money doing it, and I already know how difficult it is to actually get hired for anything, then I was cool with it. You know, I still had the aspirations and still had the dreams. So it wasn't, I was never, of course, I want things to move faster, and, you know, I see other people going up the ladder quicker, but I never really, I don't have that way of thinking like, oh, this needs to go faster.
So, what did you feel like after having shot a few videos with the Rockefeller crew? What did you feel like was your next moment where your career really leveled up? What was the thing that you felt was the next tipping point?
Good question. I'm gonna stick and stay with the whole Rockefeller crew. So I think when we did Streets is Watching is pretty much when I was like, okay, this could be something big,
Mm.
because it was different. For people who don't know what Streets is Watching is, it's a long form music video that was sold in the stores as a first VHS tape, if we remember those, and then eventually DVD. And within that group of songs, it was basically going to be the B sides of songs that he had out, like, meaning he already had the first album, Reasonable Doubt. I'm not quite sure if the singles were this, that, or the other, but he was just going to do stuff where he would take stuff that he wouldn't put on the radio and do music videos for those. And those weren't going to be super flashy or anything. Those were going to be kind of gritty. And a little backstory on that is like by the time we got up to The Streets Is Watching, kind of skipped a bunch of music videos that I did for them, but other people were now buzzing in their ear. So, there's other people coming around and doing videos for them. So, that I'm a little pissed off about. So that I can say, yeah, that wasn't cool, because I'm like, what happened to the loyalty? When you get a bigger budget, they went to Hype Williams. So when they went to Hype Williams and they did Sunshine video with Foxy Brown, I mean, I did the Ain't No Nigga video. That was number one. How come I can't get, the video with a bigger budget? Whatever. I wasn't that salty, but I was kind of pissed. But basically that video sort of backfired for Jay because it was very pop, and they had the fisheye lens, and it was that Puff Daddy vibe, where this, my vibe was more street. So the Streets Is Watching project came out. I think Shaka Pilgrim pitched it to Damon, and then Damon pitched it to me, saying we want to do this long form video. We want to keep it street and make it real gangster and try to tell a story with these B-side videos or B-side songs. So that's how that project came about. And also it was different because, like I said, it was for sale. It wasn't for TV. So I think we put one of the songs was released as a single, which was the song Streets Is Watching, but everything else was B-sides, meaning it's only sold it's only on that video. And eventually when we did Face Off with Sauce Money, that one made it on the Playboy channel because it had topless women in it. But so only two of them really were released separately. So that pretty much set a tone out there for myself where, I don't know if tone is the right word, but it set something out where, hey, this guy can do stories, and he's not following the trends. I wasn't following the trends. I was trying to be myself and try to tell a story. So people noticed that. So that was a change, basically. Now, a bunch of movies didn't come my way, but I got a lot of recognition, and then people wanted to emulate the stories, the storytelling music video, where a lot of other people were starting to go towards that flashy, shiny suit look, but I still kept it to a storyline. So in hindsight, I was like, maybe I should have went that direction too. But I just had a goal in my head that if I keep telling these story-driven videos, maybe I'll be able to do a movie, or maybe I'll do a TV show.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a great segue. You kind of set me up for the question that I had. When you move in an industry like this, where it's all about the creative mind, but there are also trends, and you'll turn on. I remember turning on the TV back then, and you would see dozens of videos with the same look. Everything was shiny and over the top. You're coming at this from a different vantage point now, thinking about how your career has gone over the years, and how it has evolved. How do you maintain a sense of authenticity and stick to your eye and your style when the checks, the executives, the opportunities might be saying that something else is what's popular right now?
You just got to weigh it out, meaning like, are you making a living? Are you happy being authentic to yourself? Do you like what's trending? Do you want to do what's trending? That's the thing, because you want to have the opportunity to be an artist, because I'm an artist also. I'm not just pushing buttons. You actually got to come up with the idea. You got to deal with certain personalities to get people to dance like strippers. It's sort of like you have to figure out what's good for you. In reality, yeah, I would just, if they just kept coming, well, we just want this video, we want you to do it, and we want it to look like that, then yeah, I probably would have done it. But no one was doing that. I was always pitching my own, because then when you write a treatment, no one says we want a booty video. They just said, write what you feel, or what do you think the song is showcasing. So I would always try to write a story And that was pretty much what my goal was. I didn't really think, and it wasn't me being political, like, oh, I don't want to exploit anyone, but it wasn't that. It was just like, well, these guys are already doing it. Let me do something else. So I just stuck
So
with that.
yeah, and I think your story, there are a couple of different lessons to glean here, primarily, and this is something that has been talked about in media as of late, and that is like networking across. So everybody wants to get to the person that's at the top of the food chain and not realizing that there's value in making those connections and relationships with those who are kind of early in their career as well, and you evolve together. That's the first thing. Secondly, you had a vision very early of what you wanted to be in the industry, right? Directing and all those other things, but taking on these other skills and not just taking them on in the sense that you were taking the jobs that were available, but studying them and honing your craft in other ways, which I think is important. And also not necessarily being driven by the biggest paycheck out there. Sometimes it is about taking the opportunity as well. And these storied journeys, with many chapters, I think sometimes because we're in this era now where people seem like overnight sensations, and because we do have the internet and social media, folks are getting plucked out and getting these major opportunities. The younger generations, I think, don't often see the value of starting as a parking PA, or starting in an area that may not be where they really want to end up. So how do you see sort of the digital era and the way things have evolved and the ability to get exposure earlier a detriment in some ways to folks like professional development?
Yes and no. I mean, the bottom line is there's the industry that is serious and there's a lot of money on the line, and then there's everything else. Social media exposures could get you money, but it might not. It might get you recognition if you're, I don't even know what to call certain people who just put out material, because now they just call it content. And like before, I was like, what's content? Anything is content. So, back in the day, and I don't even want to say back in the day, but there's very specific things that you do as a filmmaker and as a director that there's a lot of thought that goes behind it. There's process, there's money, there's other people who you have to collaborate with. And, these days, most of the stuff, you can just take a phone and just go ahead and do it, and it's done. It's all in it's just in this one little phone. But before, there was at least, 8 people you had to at least collaborate with to get something that looks decent. So now it's just like what's in the content is going to make you stand out. So if there's something that's worthy in the content, then you're ahead of the game. But if you're just putting stuff out, you're just putting stuff out. It doesn't make you less of a filmmaker, but once that real opportunity comes, all the stuff that you were doing as a solo person doing content on the internet is out the window, because now you got millions of dollars on the table and people aren't trying to throw that away. So it takes a minute to sort of grasp how people can come up in the industry now versus how you came up in the industry when there wasn't the internet and social media.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that both work, but you can only go but so far on the social media side.
And we know the music industry has changed quite a bit as digital has taken over, as well. Music videos different, budgets different. So how has your career evolved as the industry has evolved as well?
I mean, at some point, I just couldn't get hired to do the music videos that were low budget because I didn't want to do them. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to do a $5,000 music video because reality is that's my salary. But now if it's the whole video, I mean, if you made 5,000 in a video, you're like, oh man, that's reality, that's a lot of money, but it's not. You want 10,000. So yeah, 10,000 was my salary. But now if the whole video is 10,000, well, how much can you make? 500, 1,000? So you have to figure out what you want to do and how you're going to top the next video that you've done. So I just decided to not try for it. And then they were still doing big videos, but like you mentioned, the industry changed, positions changed. A lot of people who stuck around the label, people just got hired, period. Like, we're just gonna hire this person because there's not a lot of these 100, 200, $300,000 videos. So this guy's reliable. Whatever deal they cut, they got. So, I can't say, oh, they stopped doing high budget videos, but they did. There was basically three tiers back in the day. It was like, the $1 million videos, and you got the ones, it was probably like four. You had the big giant $1 million videos. Then you had the ones that are a few 100,000. Then you had the ones that were just a little bit under 100,000. And then you had the ones like 25 and below.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of like the ballpark. So I was sort of around the $100,000 videos. That was where I was. That was my playground. So to go from that to $5,000, it's not worth it.
Right.
So the music video world sort of went in the same direction as like soap operas, because soap operas were big. There was soap operas on all these channels. People were working. People, actors were being on soap operas and going off to have other careers, or they just stuck with soap operas. But suddenly, they're gone. It's like, I think there's one or two maybe. So you just have to adjust and figure out what you're going to do. I think soap operas eventually turned into web series, and that sort of it's still around, but people realize you ain't making no money in a web series.
Right.
So, I think NAFTA, what was it called? NAFTA. It was NAFTA, whatever that company was that was selling or giving away the music, pretty much.
Oh, Napster.
Yeah, they pretty much ruined a lot of people's careers.
Oh, for sure. That's when everything switched. And
so if anybody's like, oh, that's dope, Napster was the bomb, like, yeah, but so many people lost their careers and their jobs and their livelihoods, and the production companies closed, and people moved back to New York or wherever they were, and they were out in LA. It's like a lot of things happened just because people were stealing music.
Right. And now, especially having worked and been in New York for the last 12 years or what have you, meeting people who are stuck in middle management in media or TV network, or doing something totally different, trying to get a small business off the ground. But when you ask them about their career prior to now, you'll hear these stories. Oh, I worked at Columbia, or I was a high-powered executive at this place. But when those jobs went away, there was nowhere else for them to go to have an equivalent title and experience in a different industry.
Right.
And some of them have never recovered. They've never gotten back to the same level financially, from a status, professional title perspective, none of it.
Right. So luckily I still had those other skills. So that helped move forward. If I wasn't directing, I can edit or shoot. So, by the time it went digital, when everything started to go away from film, and like the Canon 5D, when that came out, at first I was scared of it. I was like, I don't know how to use this camera.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, I was shooting like a lot. Like I would be a videographer for BET or OWN, or, a lot of VH1 stuff. And I just took a career in that once the music videos sort of teetered out. So I was just on different jobs shooting until the 5D came out. Then I realized, oh, I can do cinematic looking stuff that's different than what you would do with a P2. The Panasonic P2 was popular at one point, but it had a video lens. So then I started shooting again, and then I would shoot music videos for no money, but that's because I still love the art form. But I actually created a band because I was a frustrated musician. We kind of skipped over that part, but I was a frustrated musician that, I love Sade. That's like my go-to artist for style. So I had created a band I don't know, I'll tell you the story real quick, but there was this artist that came out. I think her name was Kesha,
Yeah, Kesha with the dollar
and
sign.
she blew up. And I thought the song was terrible. No offense, Kesha, if she's listening, but I thought that song was horrible. And I had just started dabbling with the digital workstation on my computer that where you can do music. And I was so mad that that song was blowing up. I was like, I'm gonna just do a song and get a model friend of mine and just say something on the mic and let's just put it out as a goof. So I created this song. I'm still learning how to use it. Was GarageBand. I was still trying to learn how to play that stuff into the computer. And I came up with this reggae beat, and I had let one of my snobby New York musician friends hear it, and he actually liked it. And he was like, "Oh, you should do something with that." I was like, "Yeah, I was planning on doing this goof song, but maybe I won't do that." So I kind of killed that idea. And just out of chance, of an actress friend of mine, Don Noel, had introduced me to someone who was on The Lion King, just moved out to LA, and her name was Natalie Ridley. And we started talking, and she was natural sister with afro and everything. And I think we're just kicking it. We became quick friends. And I was like, yeah, I'm trying to do a song. And she was like, yeah, I'm trying to write a song. And I'm a singer, and I'm just getting started. And I was like, I'm a producer just getting started. So we collaborated on this song called Come Again. And we created this band called Boss. And at the time, people were saying the word boss a lot. And I wish I never, to this day, I'm like, I don't know if I would have known better, I would not use that. But it was B.O.S.S. and like whatever it stands for. At one point, it was like big on sexy shit or big on sexy sound. But like I said, we were just going to do one song. So to put that out together, I created a band just because I hated the music that was coming out. And I wanted to do a music video that I wanted to do. So we did everything. We produced and created the song, did a video. We shot it in like 4 days, we had no money, but we shot a video in 4 days, which is a lot of days. So we shot in LA, we shot in New York, we shot in Brooklyn. We just happened to be in all these places within, a 2 to 3 week period. And, the video didn't go anywhere, but the song, people liked it. They're like, oh my God, you could play music. So it was a big surprise for a lot of people. So we released it on iTunes and Amazon, and it sold, but it was, we didn't have a marketing machine behind us. But to me, that was just me wanting to express myself as an artist and taking the next step to actually make it happen and not wait for someone to green light me and say, all right, you can do it now. It's like, no, I'm just going to go ahead and do it.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up putting out 2 albums, a bunch of music videos, trying to get her back in the studio now. But, the COVID thing is sort of messing it up.
At the end of the day, real creators are going to create, even if it means charting your own course and creating those opportunities yourself. I think that definitely separates those who are just sort of interested in the shiny aspects of an industry or a career path, and those who feel like they are called to it. They'll find the opportunities, and if they can't find them, they're going to make them themselves.
Right. And I think the other thing was this project, the music project. And if anyone wants to go check it out, just go to the website. It's bossmusicny.com. That's bossmusicny.com. And now we just stuck to our well, I don't know if it was me only, but I stuck to what I loved, which was that era of sound, the Sade sound. And it's not all Sade sound, but it's a combination of what I love, which is reggae, sort of like the British soul and melodic stuff, Hall & Oates style, or Brand New Heavies, or Seal. Even like Isaac Hayes, people like that influenced me. Maxwell. I can't say Prince. I can just say Prince is the God. So I can't say he inspired me, but those artists just stuck to their particular sound. And for me, that was a good sound, which is, the main pieces of instruments: bass, drums, percussion, strings, guitar, and some horns, and the vocals. That was, what I wanted to do, and that's sort of where we stayed. Where a lot of we experimented in different sounds. Right now, I'm trying to do maybe a little more electronic, but I'm trying to stick with it because I
Mhm.
see how at the time, Maxwell I thought was brilliant. No one could really match Maxwell's style. He had his own particular style. So I also like that style. And I think then now we have someone like Lucky Day who comes out and he has that style, and she sort of has a more soulful style. So I always gravitate towards soul music versus traditional R&B music.
Absolutely. So how are you now balancing your time between music and film?
Well, the music is always unfortunately secondary because
Mhm.
it's not, something I can do. I had to be inspired to do it. And then, like I said, COVID has really put a damper on a lot of stuff. But I'm I'm back to the editing. I mean, I did a lot of projects. Let's back up. I did a lot of short films because I wanted to get into TV, and then I did a movie, State Property, and that was done right at the tail end of the urban flicks or the hood flicks you want to call it. So it was like the little movie that could. It was a movie starring Beanie Siegel and Jay-Z. Um, I'll say it is a hood flick 100%, but it was
Mhm.
popular, and now it's like a cult classic. And now now they have power, and now they have what is that BMB something? It's on
Yeah, the BMF show
now
now
they
as
have
well.
that
Mhm.
on Stars, and once they put that on, then they put their property back on Stars. So I know I'm influencing them for them to pull that out of the archives and put it on their streaming channel. So I've been doing a lot of short films, but trying to do stuff that's not, you know, uh, hip hop or urban or whatever you want to call it. You sort of fight these labels, even though you enjoy them, and that's sort of where you are in your brain, where you want to do something that you understand. If it's, I guess the term, I don't know who came up with the term urban, but I thought it was a little odd. But the gangster flicks and all that, but that was my genre. That's what I liked. But it didn't have to just, no one's going to say that to Martin Scorsese. Maybe they do say it to Martin Scorsese because I know the Italian community wasn't always happy with his portrayals, but he was good at it.
Mhm.
So I kind of felt I was good at the hip hop gangster vibe, but that passed. So I did a couple of films, Curse of War, which had to deal with PTSD from a returning soldier. I did a short film called Balance of Power, and that was actually told through music, more experimental, almost a fashion film. And I did all the music, but I did it on the low. Like I put my pseudonym on it, DJ Abby Ab. And that one, like these short films won a bunch of awards and stuff like that. But then the market is flooded
Mhm.
with short films, so you really don't make a lot of money from them. But it was playing on Amazon. It's still on Amazon actually. Um, I don't know, Dick. But that also been editing. So I teamed up with Angela Robinson Witherspoon, who is the widow of John Witherspoon. And we did a couple of projects. We're working on a project right now that I'm editing, shooting, and co-producing. It's on Betty Saar. Betty Saar is an artist out here in LA. She's 95.
Mm.
And we've been working on this for several years. So that's what I'm currently doing right now. And I do some producing for AFCA, which is the African American Film Critics Association. So over the pandemic, we were doing award shows virtually.
Right.
So I'll be doing these. I'll probably be doing that within the next few days, actually getting started. I think getting started Monday. So we're not sure if we're going to go virtual or in person. But basically, we would have our show before the Oscars. So we would get just pick all the right people. Um, and usually the person who we pick goes on to win an Oscar,
Wow.
which is always very cool. Um, last year was virtual. The year before was virtual as well. Actually, the year before it wasn't virtual, but last year was virtual. And so that's what I'm doing now. I sort of just squished everything together, but those are the key things I'm doing. the Betty Saar documentary, which should be, should be very interesting because it shows a journey of someone who's been doing this for so long. But she also started late in life.
Mm.
I think she started in the 30s, really, but she's just starting to get her recognition in her 90s.
Wow,
that's a long time to wait. But you keep a lookout for it. It's a positive project.
So you've continued, your career has taken on many iterations, but you've continued to work, right? Through all of this. And so looking back on this journey of all these years, describe a time when you had to be extraordinary on an ordinary day.
Say that one more time so I can think about it while you say it.
Describe a time when you had to be extraordinary on an ordinary day.
Man, but that's every day though. That's every day unless I'm not doing anything, because it does take a lot of effort to just create something. You know what I mean? I just had a conversation with a producer friend of mine, and she was talking about a script that I wrote, and she was like, well, why did the person say that? And you said this in the script and you did that. I was like, that's because that's what I was thinking at the time. So it's like everything and the point I was making is like nothing just falls on the page. Also, I'm a writer as well, but I know I didn't mention that. And I'm in the Writers Guild. I'm also in the Directors Guild. And I do a lot of events and all sorts of things with the African American committee. It's called the African American Steering Committee. So I've been on that for several years, and we do a lot of talkbacks and Q&As and stuff like that. But the point I was making is like, to answer your question, is like every day is like that, because every day I have to motivate myself to do stuff. I've never had a 9-to-5 ever. Wow. I mean, yeah, if you work on a particular gig, but it's still never a 9-to-5 corporate job. I've always had an artistic related job. I think the only time I worked in a restaurant is when I was in college. I was like a busboy at Tortilla Flats, downtown New York. And I had like a friend who worked there at another place called Gulf Coast. Oh, the same owners. And he also wanted to be an actor and a filmmaker, and he went on to do it. His name was Vin Diesel, but back then, it was Mark Vincent. So, you always get these people in your life that you sort of try to connect with when they're started, but no one has money, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, like he was like, I want you to direct my short film. I'm going to star in it, but he didn't have any money. So I couldn't do it because I couldn't do it. And the thing is, I tell a lot of people, is like, I personally can do it, but I know that there's other people that need to be hired to help me do it. So I don't want to put all that weight on my shoulders. So I have to sort of pick and choose sometimes. And sometimes I regret it. That one, I don't regret at all, because I really had nothing to do with his success, but I always wanted to work on his job or his short film, but it just couldn't. He didn't have a budget, so I couldn't do it.
So looking ahead to the next chapter of your career in life, what do you want out of the Abdul Malik Abbott brand?
I definitely want to direct TV. I'm writing a TV series, dramedy right now. I have a couple of scripts that I wrote, both crime dramas. One is a love story crime drama. The other one is more of a just action crime drama. So that's my wheelhouse. But I also can write whatever comes my way if I get paid to do it. That's the key. Writing is hard to sit and just write for free. Spec scripts are no joke. And I always say writing and editing are the both most time-consuming gigs, and lonely gigs, because you can't for me, I can't play music while I'm editing or writing. Maybe instrumental orchestra music or something like that, a soundtrack, but it's just, you just sit in a dark apartment. Well, mine is dark. You sit in front of a computer and you just got to put in that work. So I don't even know if I answered your question, but what I want to do, I still want to keep directing and producing. I added producing onto the list, and writing if I have to. If I can stop editing, I would, but it helps pay the bills, so I will do it. Camera, I'll do it here and there, but I tend to find like I can't keep up with the technology. Like I can't keep buying cameras because I use it. Well, I'll just keep. Oh, the Mark II is out. Okay, let me get the Mark III. Okay, now that's taking. Now the Mark IV is out. Now the Mark V is out. Oh, now we got the C300, and now the C300 III. So you sort of they keep changing the technology so much that it's hard to master it. So I sort of just fell back on that a little bit of shooting because I couldn't keep up with owning the equipment.
Which I'm glad you referenced that, because people have these idealized visions of what they think it means to be a filmmaker, or a cinematographer or director, not realizing that there are very real concerns and limitations which may impact the direction your career goes in, even for somebody like you who's been in this business now for decades. That there are the resources and financial investment, and time investment that it takes, that may actually dictate kind of the direction that you take, that may not be the same if you had unlimited resources.
Right. I do find that there are certain people who will give themselves the title because they did the job, but they're not really a producer. They just produced something and they put it out. They might have paid $100 for it. I don't know if that makes you a producer, but in reality, it does, because you said you were, but you're not. You gotta. I don't know. It's a weird thing when someone just says, "Oh, I'm a director." Like, what have you directed? Nothing. But I direct. Well, I directed my friend's little short. Okay, you're a director, but I don't know. You just gotta respect the craft a little bit, a little bit more than just grabbing that title and running with it. Because, for example, someone had told me that they're a DP, a director of photography, but they didn't know anything. I asked them a few questions. They didn't know about a light meter. They didn't know about, all those basic things that you thought you should know. They just didn't know. So maybe you're just a guy with a camera. I call him GWC, just a guy with a camera. You turn it on and make sure it's in focus and you got exposure, and you shoot. But when it comes to balancing the lights and all the other fun technical math that comes with it, I don't think you can say that, because as soon as if someone hires you, you're going to be ass out when you can't perform. So that's why I'm real particular with titles, especially for me. I'll never say I'm a director of photography. I'll say I'm a videographer or a lighting cameraman. But can I light an entire movie? No. I mean, no, I can't. I mean, I can have the vision. Like, if I was directing it, I can say I want to look like this. I want it to look like that. I can tell somebody how I want it. I can, say maybe you can use this. But there's people who are experts in this. So let everyone do their job. Don't try to do everybody's job, even though I can maybe do half of them. But it doesn't make sense to do that, because that's not how the business is run.
That little nugget of advice is a great place to end on, I think.
Okay.
Well, listen, thank you so much for joining the December 26er family and appearing on the show. But before we let you get out of here, tell people where they can find you online. I know you mentioned Boss's website, but if there are other places that they can find you online as well, please feel free to share.
Sure. You can find me on Instagram at DJ Abbey Ab. That's DJ Abbey Ab. Blue Music Productions on Instagram. And my personal website is abdulmalikabbott.com. So that's AbdulMalikabbott.com. Yeah, that's pretty much where you can find me. I think that's where you guys found me. And if someone writes an email, I always respond, and I try to give good advice when people ask for it. I can't hire anybody, so don't. Actually, sometimes I can, but that's a whole nother. If there's editors out there with a dope reel, or DPs out there, or cinematographers with a dope reel, feel free to send me your stuff. But acting wise, I'm not hiring, so hopefully folks won't send me a bunch of emails. But I definitely I definitely do answer anybody's questions when they need advice or stuff like that.
Well,
And I try not to read unsolicited scripts because, one, it takes too long to read them, and two, I don't really want your ideas in my head while I'm writing something else.
bingo. That's
You
how
stole my shit.
that's how frivolous lawsuits happen. Yes.
Right. Exactly. But if you got money behind it, feel free to contact me.
Awesome. Well, to our listeners, you know what to do. If you have questions, if you are legit in this business and would like to connect as well and display your talents as a behind the scenes professional within the film and or music industry, feel free to reach out to Abdul at the mediums that he's actually described. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, like, share, subscribe, tell somebody about it, comment, and as always, remember to be extraordinary on an ordinary day. Take care.